BXB. It's in the game!
Frankly, it's hard to believe that the Battlefield series has existed since 2002. That's a whopping 14 years ago. On the current generation of hardware, we've had, well, you could argue 3 iterations of Battlefield if you include Star Wars Battlefront. So, finally we're here. Battlefield 1, one of the big tentpole releases of 2016 and its fall season. And I'm going to start off by just saying this game, it doesn't sort of disappoint. It's absolutely stunning. So what I'm going to do here is, as is my style of review, I'm going to have a chat to you guys listening for, however long I feel like going basically about Battlefield. I do this all in one take, and, I've played the game now, single player, multiplayer, for about 15 hours, finished off single player, played a lot of multiplayer. And, the first thing you're going to notice when you play Battlefield 1, is that this is a Battlefield game. If you are a fan of Battlefield games, you will enjoy this. Now, let's go back to get some context to this. I've played all the Battlefield games on this current generation of hardware, and many of the ones on the previous generation. Let's talk about this current generation. We started with Battlefield 4. Now, that's a really good game, but it was absolutely destroyed by a terrible, terrible launch. It had the worst network connectivity problems, which took them weeks, if not months, to fully iron out. Because of that, it lost a lot of players. Then we had Battlefield Hardline, which was their slightly weird move towards sort of a take on kind of like a criminal, cops and robbers thing. Even though the multiplayer still felt very similar to 4, the story itself was, moving towards this episodic structure. And that's what we start to see as a big influence here in Battlefield 1. One of the standout things about Battlefield 1 is its single player. Now, I think it'd be weird for me to have to explain what's actually happening here in Battlefield 1. It'd be hard for me to imagine you've missed any of this hype cycle or the trailers, but basically Battlefield 1 is DICE's decision to take the game and the genre of the first-person shooter back in time to World War I. Now, when I heard that, I was a little bit concerned, as I'm sure a lot of people were. The Great War, while I won't profess to be an expert about it, actually, I've learnt some things while playing Battlefield 1. But the Great War was a terrible, terrible, terrible event. A tragedy which cost millions of people lives. So, you say that happened in World War II as well, and we've had lots of games about that. Battlefield, World War I was a little bit different. It was a meat grinder. It churned through people at an alarming rate. Because of the combination of the mixture of mechanized combat with sort of still cavalry tactics, it was just awful. It was an awful place, and I was concerned, I was concerned that this would make light of that situation. Thankfully, though, DICE have done some amazing work with their campaign, and let's look at that first of all. The campaign is told through a series of self-contained vignettes. It really does an amazing job of getting across the global scale of World War I. Because each of these, I think it's 5 missions or 5 campaigns, is a different set of characters in a different part of the world. Parts of the world, I guess, I didn't think of that much as a British citizen. I would have thought of, the Western Front, the conflict in Europe. But this is conflicts all over the globe, because Battlefield 1 was the first truly World War. Battlefield 1. World War 1 was the first truly World War. And this is, reflecting that. So we have these fascinating little stories that, while, showing the realities of the conflict, don't tell a true story. They're not like actual events of what happened there and stuff. But they do a thing about bringing you into the conflict, bringing you into the war, and it really is evocative and powerful stuff. You've got this framed sort of narrative devices often, which tell the story of the people inside those particular moments from an outside perspective or from a perspective removed by time. You've also got like this amazing one which is to do with the flying stuff, which is told from an unreliable narrator's point of view. So this guy's embellishing, he's bigging up the story as you experience it, as he tells it to you. It's fucking brilliant. I'm swearing there because it is absolutely stonking good campaign. It's easily the strongest single player Battlefield has had since like the Bad Company games, I think. It's the best on this current generation of hardware by some distance. Just to give you an idea, you've got story stuff to do with the tank brigades and the mechanized combat. You've got story stuff to do with the flying aces and the battle in the air. You've got other bits to do with the Australians and naval combat. And then you've got this crazy stuff to do with Lawrence of Arabia as well. It's absolutely brilliant. Oh, and I'm nearly forgetting my favourite one, which was the stuff to do with the sort of Italians and the Austro-Hungarians, which deal with these special forces troops, but this guy's basically Iron Man. I had no idea there were special forces troops in World War I which had full plate armor. It's awesome. It's exciting. It's engaging. It's different. And you can play these little vignette campaigns in any order. I did, actually. I jumped between all of them, all 4 or 5 of them, switching, do a mission here, do a mission there, and stuff like that. And it felt really engaging, and I never got bored. Some of them are definitely more harder than others. And sometimes you feel like a little bit, maybe you're being trained for the multiplayer experience, especially with the flying stuff. But that's fine. I think that's a good first-person campaign, one that brings to you the mechanics and the experience of the multiplayer. Now, let's talk about the multiplayer. Everybody knows you come to Battlefield for the multiplayer experience, and it's a unique one. There is, first-person shooters a dime a dozen. I'm about to review another one, and there'll be another one after that, and then another one after that. Much like open world games, they all come out at this time of year, and there's always loads. But Battlefield is the one with the massive scope. It's the one with the 32 on 32 multiplayer mode, which is the bread and butter of Battlefield. It's excellent. It's still great fun. You just don't know what's going to happen from moment to moment. And this new setting of World War I was dubious. I was like, well, what different guns are we going to get? What kind of equipment are we going to get? But, they've done a great job of, slightly fudging the truth to give us lots of variety in weapons, lots of variety in equipment. I personally like playing as the support and medic classes. You've got the fact that you've got these less advanced weapons brings this sort of feeling to Battlefield, which it's been lacking in the modern settings. It brings an immediacy and a brutality to the combat that makes it so engaging. Now, the multiplayer, because of its nature, can't be as respectful to the reality of World War I as the single player can, and that's to be expected. I still think they do a good enough job of respecting the conflict. But I mean, what is there to say? I was actually thinking about this quite a lot before doing my review. Let's talk about technically. It works well. The netcode works. The only issue I have is getting from game to game, map to map. The load times can be kind of long, and sometimes the menus are a little bit janky and can get hung up between these loads. I think this is stuff that will be patched and improved, but it's by far the best launch stability we've seen from a Battlefield game in some time, especially in the modern generation. So everything like that, works well enough. You're dealing with 32 on 32 players. You can forgive a little bit of a long loading time. The maps are stunning. Let's just talk about the look now of Battlefield 1. This is the Frostbite engine being played with, being used by the developers that created the engine. It's a first-person shooter engine at heart, and these guys know exactly what to do with it to get the best from it. We've seen it in FIFA now, this engine. It's going to be in the Mass Effect Andromeda. It's showing up everywhere. EA is using this engine everywhere, and it's a stunning engine when it's used well. The visuals are mind-blowingly attractive. There are moments in this game where you think you're looking at reality. It's so photorealistic. It's so perfect, from the lighting to the weather effects to the environments. Even the character models are excellent. The cutscenes in the campaign are just brilliant. Everything looks absolutely stunning, top notch, AAA at its most AAA. The production in general in Battlefield is fantastic, and in the multiplayer it shines brilliantly. The sound effects, the sound design, the feeling of bullets whizzing past your ears, just around you as you're getting shot at. It's absolutely wonderful, and it's exciting, and it's immediate. So let's talk about that combat again. Let's get back into the multiplayer discussion, because I think that's why we're all really here in the Battlefield series. You want to know if it's fun. It's fun. You want to know if there's lots of guns to play with, lots of customization options. It's all there. They've done this thing with battle packs this year, which are the kind of microtransaction supported system. If you want to go down that route, you really don't need to do that though. Battle packs just give you cosmetic changes to weapons, completely unnecessary. Everything else is unlocked with war bonds, which can be a little slow to come by once you start the game for the first time. But once you start getting into the flow of things and leveling up, you'll start to be able to build your classes how you want to play the classes. There's lots of one thing I really liked actually was that there are many more class-specific weapons that encourage you to play a class that suits you and that you find enjoyable. Therefore, there's not lots of weapons that cross over between the classes, and I think that's a really good idea and gives you a focus in the multiplayer towards a thing you want to achieve. There's other things that do that as well. Medal system, which you can attach to your games so that you can unlock and improve in certain classes. That's how it's set up at the moment, but I imagine there'll be lots of flexibility in the medals as the game is further supported. Obviously, DICE is going to have lots of new maps and stuff like that coming out for the game. They have quite a pricey season pass, but the game is of such an incredible high polish standard. It's absolutely fantastic, and I honestly can't recommend it enough right now. I think this is the pinnacle of the Battlefield experience so far on the current generation of hardware. I think while Battlefront was great fun, the Star Wars game, it was obviously very much pared down and minimal in its presentation and its customization options, and that works for that franchise. They're trying to attract as many sort of non-big multiplayer people as possible. This Battlefield has all the gameplay mechanics, all the map types. It has a nice, if not sometimes overly slick interface. It's nicely presented. The campaign is exemplary, which is way better than I thought anything would be campaign-wise in a Battlefield game. Just fantastic, and the multiplayer is as brilliant, if not more brilliant, than it has ever been. So because of that, and because I see Battlefield 1 as the pinnacle of the Battlefield franchise to this point, I can't give this game any less than 5 stars.
BXB. It's in the game.